Okay. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Oh, this is going to be an interesting one today. So, if this topic, the topic of Satan, the devil, Lucifer, evil, is maybe something that is, uncomfortable. It's very much the shadow aspect of our reality. At least we've been told. Um, I just want to invite you to join me here and maybe put to the side everything that you've been told, everything that you've believed, because we have a full moon in Capricorn, the second full moon in Capricorn. Apparently, there was another one back at the end of June. We're still coming to the end of now the Capricorn sign in the zodiac, and that, my friends, is tied to this energy of the devil. And I'm feeling and have been in this space since actually that first full moon, this recognition of my beliefs around good and evil. So I'm going to be covering a bunch of different things here today. Apparently, this is what was my soul or whatever needs to do around my self-expression. But I'm open to hearing your thoughts, your views about this. So feel free to let me know in the chat at any point. And maybe we'll start off what are your views around evil, around Lucifer, about this sort of energy? Please let me know. My name's Fola. If you're new to the channel, here at Deep Mind Squared, I talk all things magical practices and altered states. And my focus, coming from a very Christian background, I grew up kind of like Pentecostal. My parents, speak in tongues, laying on of hands, very much this judgment energy of God. God is this being who is there sitting and waiting for the end of times, in which then we are all put in our individual way to a test, to see have we lived life good or not. And there are judgments. And I wanted to add to this. Oh, I'm going to just read. Oh, hi, Nick. Sorry about your medical stuff. That's unfortunate. Hope you can feel better soon. But I wanted to just talk about today. Today is the 20th of July, okay? In the kind of Hermetic Qabalistic system, there's a method of looking at the days and attaching them to the tarot keys, the major arcana keys. And so for today, we have key 20, which is the judgment card. It seemed very fitting to me. But when I was actually, before I was choosing what the cards were going to be or putting them down on the layout for the day, the thing that came to me was, no, it's not key 20. For whatever reason, I kept thinking it's path 20, path 20. So on the tree of life, we have these different paths, okay, that connect. And each of these are also associated to the tarot, major arcana cards. And what that path 20 actually is the Hermit. And I was like, okay, well, interesting here. We have the Hermit, which is in a way the light bringer. He's holding the light up. There's a star there, that Merkaba star, that lamp of spirit, if we could even say. And I say the light bringer because we know what the term Lucifer means. Lucifer is the light bringer. Hallel is the Hebrew term for that. Lucifer has the tie to Venus, has the tie to this concept of the morning star. And there's so many different traditions out there that hold different stories about Lucifer, some aspect, these archetypal energies of Lucifer. The oldest in which I would identify, I believe it's Sumerian, is the story of Enki and Enlil. The idea that there were these gods, I believe they were considered the Anunnaki, that they came to Earth. And their mission here on Earth was to mine gold. And they were like, okay, well, we gotta, we need gold to save our back our home planet. Nibiru, I think it might have been called. Don't quote me on that. And they came, and Enki and Enlil were two of the sons, or probably more of the sons, but the two main ones of these gods back on the planet, and they were representing here on Earth. And I remember watching a video a long time ago, and I have hoped to find this video again. It shook me to my core at that time. I was kind of at the beginning of my spiritual journey. And the whole idea was sharing how the views on which many of the monotheistic religions hold, the Judaic religions, especially like Christianity, is this concept that the focus has been on the Yahweh or Jehovah God. And in connection with these old myths of these like old times of Enki and Enlil, that like Yah God would be considered Enlil. And the idea was that Enlil wanted to mine the gold, and they created humans as basically like slaves. They started to create these slaves so that they could mine more gold and have control over the planet and do all these things and use them for the hard labor. But what was Enki's view versus Enlil's view? Enki was like, well, no, like these people need to be free. They need to have knowledge so that they can go about and do what they want. And so Enki is considered to have that like serpentinian or like serpent energy, reptilian energy as well. It's said that Enki was the one that gave that knowledge even to like Eve. Again, they have the story of connection to Adam and Eve, the first humans, etc. And so this concept of God that we know in the Christian sense is almost being a controlling, judgmental energy that just wants the humans to do what he wants them to do. And then this concept of Lucifer, this concept of the satanic creature Enki, who is like, no, like there needs to be a sense of independence and autonomy. And a little while ago, like again, this whole month, I guess, we've had these things happen that have really been testing where I've stood. You know, and I kind of like I identify myself as a person who stands outside the box, right? Someone who is curious and really open to finding the truth of anything. I want to understand like both sides, and that's probably like I think what is it, Libra moon? No, Aquarius moon, Libra, whatever the thing is, Libra rising, and this desire to like really know like what I'm being told, is it really true? Why is it true? And how do I know that? And it's through experience. And I remember back then having this new knowledge of the concept of Enki. Okay. And I remember I was actually visiting in Vancouver at the time. And suddenly I was just like, there's something more here. What is the truth of this? And I was spending the night at a friend's house, laying on this like super thin like camping mattress. It was very minimalist. And I just remember being like, I'm going to just call to that energy. Like, I would like to understand more. And I would say that that was probably the beginning, really the beginning for me, like consciously tapping into some of this knowledge and the like rush of energy that came and the expansiveness of like, I want to say the presence of Enki. It was just it was so much. It was overwhelming for me. And I was like, okay, we need to stop because I need to sleep, be able to sleep. And I don't really know how to navigate this. So there are all these parts that I there's things I want to talk about here around the cards, the devil cards, around this concept of evil. And I feel it's all tied to kind of like the two paths that we can take. We can choose this path of judgment and seeing these concepts of like they're going to be used against us on Judgment Day, which still sometimes I'm like, I'm not really sure. It could be. Or are the experiences that we have as independent, like individual humans, leading us to this concept? Like we have to go on this path of the hermit and be led and guided by what our truth is, following the light. And it is oftentimes a very lonely path, right? Like it's not, and not in the sense that like it's going to be just you, because there's like so many people out there. That's another thing I'm learning. Like so many people out there that hold a different view than maybe what you were raised with. But it can seem lonely. It can seem like, oh, and what I was finding is it's like part of me feels this bit of not really engaging with like my authenticity because of the fears around these beliefs or these ideas that I hold around Lucifer, which we haven't really dived into yet. And it can scare people. I know people are scared even just from seeing like tarot cards. Oh my God, like, and this is because of the upbringing we've had. And so the other, like, a few weeks ago now, my partner and I went to go watch that Ghost. That's a band, Ghost. We went to watch like the live concert movie, I guess you could call it. It's a film that Thomas Forge like created around one of their tours. And if you know anything about this band, Ghost, at the time I've heard some of their music. I enjoy it. I know that they use this sort of like energy of the counter or the rebellious energy to the more formal concept of religion. And I say this meaning what his character is he's literally dressed up in like what you could call like a holy darkness, or the Pope, a priest, a bishop in this like dark aspect. He's got not just like regular crosses, he's got inverted crosses and like 666 all over his gown. Like all these ideas that in our modern society we have been told or perceive them as like evil. Like, oh my gosh, that's satanic, that's bad, that's going to be harmful. And so we went to this show and I was open to it because I'm like, oh yeah, like that's fine. But by the end, I almost walked out a couple times. I was like, oh my God, this is like hitting me in a way deeper way than I thought. The lyrics that were being sung, like I was reading the lyrics on my phone at certain points because I'm like, what exactly is he singing about? Like I need to know. And this really like fucked with my mind. It fucked with my mind for like a good week. I even to the point where I was like, oh my gosh, like if my partner likes this music and I am like being triggered, like what does that mean about us? Maybe my perspective about God is very much different and my concept about evil is very different. And maybe I'm going back to like my old way of upbringing, my like belief in Jesus is the way and But I was very grateful. It took me probably a couple days to like come back from that whole experience. But like truly I believe, and this is where I would say the power of evil, the power of darkness, the power of shadow can bring about more light. It can bring about a deepening of consciousness. Because what happened in the end is it was like I was on this spectrum of polarity where I was falling like over here, like in the middle, and watching this performance, I went all the way to like what I would identify as like God that I know of, the Christian perspective of like a monotheistic God, and away from evil, if we want to say that, away from these concepts of the darkness. And it propelled me all the way over here, and then I came back into this like middle view. So I don't know what I could identify that, like almost like a bow being pulled back so it could shoot an arrow and like land somewhere. But there was this complete shifting of my perspective. This led to more research and things coming along my path around like the Yazidis, which I didn't realize were a group of people that I had even connected with back in like my early university days with the peacock. So the Yazidis people are people in kind of like northern Iraq, Iran area. They've been persecuted by all sorts of people. It's unfortunate. Different groups have basically identified these as like evil, as Satan worshippers, because they believe in the energy of this like being called Malak Taus, I believe is how you pronounce it, which is identified as the peacock. My understanding, because none of their beliefs are written down on paper, it's all oral tradition, and they're very secretive because they've been persecuted and harmed throughout like centuries, millennia, is that they believe that like that Lucifer, the peacock, okay, we can identify, was this light bringer, was this energy that brought gnosis, if we could call it that. And so these realizations for me of like, wow, like there's other people out there that hold different views, not just this monotheistic perspective of good or bad, and you better be good because or else they'll get in trouble. and it just started opening more doors. And I realized, and I have realized over the past few years now, that many of the like famous occultists that we know, Aleister Crowley, even Madame Blavatsky, artists, I would say, and this is where it really like stands out to me, is people who create music, art, have this tapped in perspective of the shadow of darkness of Lucifer. Because again, I'm saying darkness, but Lucifer is literally the light bringer. This concept of a fallen angel that came, and the stories that we were told is that he was like bad and dismissed and sent down to earth, right? But it's like he is technically the Lord of Matter. That's what the Devil card is called, I believe, in the Separate Zero, if that's where it's. Oh my gosh! But wherever there's like titles for the different cards, and this idea here that there is lightness even in matter, okay, which I think what has happened over the years is, especially within Christianity, because that's really the only thing I can speak from personal experience, is there's been this hyper focus on our spiritual attainment, right? And a damnation, even. Like, we're judged in the Christian faith for being too earthly. Everything that's spoken about in the Bible pretty much is like, just focus on God, don't focus on the material plane because that's bad and wrong. Money is bad and wrong. The idea of being overly indulgent is bad and wrong. And yet, when we think about the concept of the devil, in this Thoth deck, this is Crowley's deck, the image is actually of the goat. And this is the Greek god, I think it's Greek, of Pan, right? Greek or Roman? Oh my gosh, someone tell me if you know. I think it's Greek. But Pan is this energy, or the goat. And it's about, the story of Pan is that he basically just goes and like overindulges in everything. Having lots of intercourse with the different like other mythical beings that exist there. And it's this concept of just like really being out there, right? And we can see that in this card. At the bottom of the goat, there are the two eggs. There's like a feminine aspect and a masculine aspect. These zygotes, if we can call them, of reproduction, putting things out there. And I was reading some books, and we actually got this book from a friend. It's called, what's it called? The Lords of the Left-Hand Path. And it's interesting because like I haven't really read it. I've gone through parts of it. My partner was the one that wanted to get this. And I was hiding this in the house because I don't want my parents to see it. That it's funny, it was like sitting amongst my books there, but like not with the binding out so you can see the title. It was the outside parts of the pages, all right? Like this is just how the way of life is, I guess, around this whole experience for me. It's like there's something about the other that exists. And I wanted to read a little bit about what this author, Stephen E. Flowers, says about the light bearer and Madame Blavatsky, who was the one who kind of started like the Theosophy group. It was like she wrote The Secret Doctrine, if you're familiar with that. She really did draw upon a lot of knowledge through her spiritual working. And I didn't actually know this about her, what's being said, but I wanted to share a bit about her views and, kind of link it back to what I was talking about, this whole idea of like Enki and Enlil, idea of the snake in the garden giving the knowledge to the humans, and what this means for the evolution of you as a human in your independence, okay? And so they say, the fact that Blavatsky named her personal magazine Lucifer is a positive indication of her attitude toward that idea and figure in the traditions of humanity. Lucifer was published during the last years of her life at about the same time she was writing The Secret Doctrine, so the title cannot be dismissed as a youthful indiscretion. Her understanding of Lucifer's Satan, whom she equates on one level, is clearly a variant of the Ophite Gnostic interpretation. When referring to Hebraic tradition, she equates Jehovah Elohim with the demiurge who created the world and man's physical aspect. And she sees the true God who liberated man and gave him his divine aspects as Lucifer's Satan. This divine aspect is one of dynamic spiritual immortality as opposed to the static physical immortality offered by Jehovah. And so she goes on, or the writer goes on to say things, including that the devils she sees are the true, higher, more spiritual aspect of the gods. And another interesting part, I didn't realize this, and I'm not sure really where they're quoting this from, but they're talking about the idea of these fallen angels, which I'd be told are like the demons or evil entities. And it says a fallen angel is called an agathodaemon, which is Greek for good spirit, as opposed to Jehovah and his obedient angels, which are called a kakodaemon, which is actually an evil spirit. So I need to do some research on that because, again, don't believe what I'm saying. You need to find your own internal light. You need to determine what it is. And I think a huge part of some of this whole idea, even reading that, is I like what they said there around the idea that, it can take us time to learn and speak. And like I said, this is not just something I've woken up with today. This has been like years for me of coming and going between this kind of engagement with this energy of the light bringer is what I would say. And I still feel a bit of like resistance even speaking that, because I know, doing so on like a public forum, speaking this to people that I know, like there's so much negative perspective, so much judgment that happens that people were like, oh my God, you're bad, you're wrong, you're evil. And that could also just be from my own upbringing, but I wanted to kind of start sharing a bit too here, a couple ideas that tie into both the full moon and some sort of like proof or evidence as to why it's important that we come from a neutral perspective. Okay. If you want to go and explore these left-handed path concepts or satanic concepts, I'm not judging that at all. I think there's like, people fall on like the ends of the spectrums. That's why it's called the left-hand path, right? We have the left-hand path or pillars. We have the right pillar. Technically, when we look at it, it's reversed too, but that's beyond the point. But we have this idea of mercy, and we have this idea of severity, the left and the right, the good or the evil. And some people feel like they can only walk on one. But I personally believe, and I think this is the mission, if I can say, of any good occultist, is to walk on the whole tree, but find the balance in the middle. To be able to recognize, which many of these, occultists of old, Madame Blavatsky, in my opinion as well, Crowley, shared about, was this idea of finding the balance. And how do you find balance? You need to know both aspects. And, thinking about Crowley and his kind of approach in the media of the time, when interviewers or people would write articles about him and he would share, it's like he knew what to say, what not to say, as a way of stirring the pot, which is kind of what the Luciferian or satanic energy does, is it stirs the pot. And so a few years back, when I was kind of first getting into more okay, I feel like there's something here, Lucifer would show up for me, which it's not like I necessarily was wanting that, but it was I could say the most distinct forms of synchronicities that would appear. Many people, even in my head would be like, oh, of course he has such power to influence the world. He's the devil. That's what the devil does. These are the things my parents would tell me. The things that I still am peeling back the layers of what that means in my life. But there was this idea that oh my gosh, you need to be mindful that yet here I was, I remember once, this is a really silly example, but this was kind of around the time things were starting to really take off. And there was this, I was in the drive-through line at Starbucks, and it was I was on a timeline. I'm oh my gosh, maybe this was a bad idea. I shouldn't be in this line. And then I got trapped. I couldn't escape. And I think I was going to work maybe. Anyway. And I, for whatever reason, it just came to me. It was kind of okay, well, if Lucifer is the Lord of matter and can move the physical reality, okay, well then let's make this thing work. Let's make this line work for me. And all of a sudden the line just started like, and I thought it was going to take me like 10, 15 minutes. It took me like just a couple minutes to get through this lineup. At least that's what it felt like, who knows really. And, I'm trying to remember the other, it's like, I feel like there were 3 parts of this whole, like the synchronicities of which was happening with this. It's like the lineup went fast, and then someone said something to me at the drive-thru, like the staff said something. But also what happened, as soon as I got out of the lineup, a song came up on my Spotify playlist. And the song was, it's by a band called King Woman, who I kind of just come into. And I think the song is actually called like Morning Star. They have one, Celestial Blue, I think is the album. And I was like, okay, well, that's bizarre. Like, what are the odds that that would happen? And to me, that was a confirmation. And I've had this happen so many times, like even to the point, this just happened within the last month even, where I was like, I've been working on some different writings and things. And I was like in the bathtub and I was just thinking, okay, I feel like I need to reconnect here to this Luciferian energy, to this concept of the light bringer. This was actually after the ghost experience, because that was kind of what it was sparking again for me. And I'm having this bath and I'm like, well, if it's meant to be, then just give me a sign. Like, give me a sign. Like, I trust that. And as I'm in the bath, all of a sudden my partner comes in and he's like, hey, I just wanted to let you know. He's like, I just finished a meditation I want you to listen to. And I was like, oh, okay, like what about? And he's like, it's a Luciferian meditation. And I was like, what? Where? Like maybe we were both being inspired by this whole ghost experience with this band. Again, this shadow, darkness, energy, which is naturally tied to the devil, Lucifer, whatever. But then he like walked out, and then some weird things were happening with the lights, which is weird. That happens often though. And it was just, again, this realization of like, okay, there's something more. And to me, it's, again, peeling back the beliefs or the views of the upbringing. And this is still something I am kind of like dancing with. Because I'm not saying this because it's like I want to be a full-on Satanist. That doesn't interest me. Sorry, I feel like a lot of people that do that are like really attention-seeking. But anyway, no, not everyone. But there are those people on either sides. I wanted to add here this view of the Christian beliefs of Jesus. I was watching a video the other day someone had sent me, and the whole idea was around this concept of like Lucifer and engaging with that energy to kind of, receive gnosis, knowledge. And what this person had to do was renounce Christ. And that like really just didn't sit well for me. I'm like, why should anyone have to do that? Right? Like, I don't believe that, because in the tree of life, we have at the center Tiferet here. This is like the center aspect of the middle pillar, we could say. And Tiferet is the Christ consciousness. To me, this is Jesus here. This is the sun, right? The sun planetarily, the sun from family, familial energy. And so, like, seeing those words, it was like, well, I hold that, like, in my energy still, not from necessarily a Christian upbringing, but just from what I perceive Jesus as now. Not as a judgment, not as this energy of, like, you better believe in him or else, which is what I was told, but more like I see Jesus as a high vibrational energy of consciousness that can bring about healing, that can bring about, like, deeper understanding as well from the spiritual aspect. And as we can see in the tree, it connects us, right? It connects us to spirit, to the higher aspect, that catcher, the crown. And, I'm not sure if you're familiar actually with the sigil. The sigil is on the, for Lucifer, the sigil is on the thumbnail of this video. And I remember reading about this sigil because at the time, back where I was sharing, things were kind of starting to spark, and I was feeling like, oh, like maybe Lucifer is like connecting with me more. Maybe there's something different here, and it's not like a dark, evil energy that I had been told growing up, but that there is actual light, there's energy, there's power here that wants to support me in what I'm creating, what I want to focus on, etc. And that sigil, what I found was like created by like some modern individual and really has nothing to do with like the Luciferian energy. But it does, because people have like given it that energy now. So it's a valid sigil, I would say. But at the time I was like, well, what's the sigil that I want to use to connect? And what I kept being shown, I'm just going to show. I actually put this in my journal yesterday, okay? Like, this is all kind of like stuff that's been populating in my mind for a while. But the sigil that I had been shown as representation for Lucifer is actually the inverted cross. I think it's called the Petrine cross, to those of you who might. And at that time, when I started reading, it's like, oh my God, that thing is so evil. Oh, my shit's kind of going down. This thing's so evil, like, we know what that means. When you see that, it's like bad and wrong. But when I started to read about this actual symbol, there are many churches, especially in Europe, that this was their primary symbol. And if you know much about the stories of the apostles, this cross was like the cross, I think it was Peter when he was, or was it Paul? Oh, whatever. Anyway, it would be Peter, because the Petrine cross, right? Petrine cross. Anyway. I should have looked this up before I came on here. But this cross was the idea that sometimes people who were being crucified after Jesus had already been like martyred, they would say, well, I refuse to be crucified in the upright position because that was what happened to like our God, our Jesus. Like, I am not worthy of that. Do me upside down. And so this symbol of the inverted cross became identified with the energy of like humility and not evil. It wasn't until like the 1960s, I think it said, when all the satanic panic stuff happened. And like this symbol was being used by like modern, I'd say North Americans, to represent the opposite of what the upward cross would be. And so this, to me, is the actual sigil for Lucifer. And what that means is it's just the reflection of Jesus. It is the reflection, the opposite of what we've been told is good. Okay? And why and how is this tied? Maybe you're asking yourself, what's Fola going on about? But to me, this is the whole idea of this full moon. This full moon in Capricorn. Okay? Capricorn being tied to this devil card. And the devil being tied to Lucifer, being tied to Pan, being tied to Capricorn. The Capricorn is the sea goat, okay? And the sea goat, I didn't really realize this until just recently. The sea goat is literally half fish and half goat. It should try to learn to climb a mountain and also be able to swim. So it lives in like two aspects, the deepest depths of the waters and the highest aspects of like these mountains that touch the heavens, touch the skies. And if you actually were to look into some of the words, some of the numbers for the gematria, all this stuff, I just want to share some of this because this is where it gets really like muddled in the sense that you start to realize what is the truth here. Like, we've been told certain things, but what is the real meaning? When you start to dive into Hermetic Qabalistic, into these occult practices and knowledge, and you start to actually tap into your inner work and ask for guidance and to be led along the path, you start to realize like what things actually mean or what they look like. And so I remember just reading and knowing that the number 666, which is often associated with like evil, with the beast, it's written in Revelations, the beast's number is 666, which is, according to historians, they say is actually when you like combine the numbers and letters of the Roman Emperor Constantine, who kind of, did a lot of harmful things to Christians or the early Christians. But this number 666, if you were to look it up in the Kabbalistic Encyclopedia, I'm just going to read off what some of the other words are, or terms that tie to this number. So 666 is the number of the beast. It's also the number of the talents of gold that Solomon received in 1 year. I was going to look up what that could be, maybe equivalent, but I'm assuming that's a lot of money. It's also the sum of the numbers 1 to 36 on the magic square of the sun. So we have a tie here again to the sun, Tiferet. It's also the name or the gematria numerical value of the name Sora, which is the spirit of the sun. I wanted to add here that another word is Sithro, which is his secret place, which I find fitting because it's like, oh, like you're not going to know the truth unless you find the secret place in which it's hidden. And then another important part here is that 666 also is Shem Yehoshuah, which is the name of Jesus. And if we think about the concept of the sea goat, we think about the concept of Capricorn for this full moon. Half fish, half goat. The fish is the representation of the early Christians, right? That's how they would know to represent each other. They would put it on the walls, the catacombs, and all the places where they were hiding so that you know, okay, this is a place where you can be. So I wanted to just speak to that this 666, sure, this number of the beast, this concept of this darkness, but there's so many ties really to Jesus, to the light, to the sun, right? To this concept of something bright. And Lucifer as this light bringer, this representation of the gnosis that we as humans can each connect to gain deeper knowledge and understanding. But there is something actually here that wants to, I think, be woken up in many people. And it's going to be like this consistent pushing against, because trust me, I had this happen many times. Like, I can't tell you how many times it was like, okay, I think I'm ready to explore some of this stuff. And then it would scare the shit out of me. And I'd be like, no. And who knows if that ever goes away, right? I sometimes wonder, how will I be on my deathbed, or whatever that looks like? Will I be in this place of what's happening in the afterlife? Do I need to repent of everything? Do I have to repent of my sins? Which I want to add with today, the gematria for today. If we were to use the Hermit card, it gives us the Hermit card, which has a value of 10 because of the letter Yod, plus this July 7th, which is the letter Chet, okay, which has a value of 8. And then the letter Tet, which represents 2024, the Strength card. That equals altogether to 27. That makes any sense to you. And one of the words tied to that gematria value is sin. Okay, I just wanted to say that. I just thought that was really fascinating. It's can we be okay with that sin, right? Can we be okay? And that video I mentioned about that other YouTuber who mentioned, renouncing Christ to go on their path to do whatever. He said something that was I decided that if I had to burn in hell, I would be okay with that. And I personally, I was like, oh my God, I don't know about that. But what that really stirred for me is, can we believe so much wholeheartedly what we believe and walk this path into the unknown, no matter what the consequence? And the devil card has this sense of fear, and it has this false sense, because fear is false evidence of hearing real. This false sense of attachment. We have attached ourselves to the Saturnian black box. These two, Adam and Eve beings, are chained to it. But if you look closely, the chains around their neck, if it'll do its thing, the chains around their neck are actually loose. And all they need to do is take it off and walk away from what these beliefs are that have been holding. And it's funny because the devil's holding a torch to the guy's tail or whatever, his butt, and being move, move. Why are you still standing here? Be free. The devil's has his hand up even in it's in a certain position, but it's almost hey, I ain't doing anything here. Get going, right? So it's can you, whatever beliefs you're holding, this could have nothing tied to Lucifer or Satan for you, That this full moon, like, what is it that you need to detach from belief-wise that's been holding you? And recognizing when you start to be open to exploring some of the stuff, the truths start to unfold. And that you won't be the only one holding on to these secrets or these truths that exist, because they have existed across time. And again, there's many different stories and peoples out there that talk about this concept of this, like, you know, again, I'm saying the word holy darkness. My friend just told me this word the other day, and I really like that. So it's like not something growing up in the church that I ever would have considered that there would be holy darkness. And yet working with Babylon, like the goddess or feminine energy of Babylon over the past few years too, has kind of led to this realization that both aspects are equally important and beautiful. Ooh. So that was a lot of stuff. I feel like this is like some weird testimony from me or for me. You know, I look forward to listening to this again in maybe 5 years or something and see where I fall. Let me know, like, what resonates or doesn't. What's hard about this message for you around these ideas? You know, what's your relationship with the light and with the dark? And how are you maybe tapping into this and opening more so that you can be more fully yourself? And I want to like kind of preface this that even this channel, I've been noticing the things that I was creating on it over the past like several months and I guess years now. It's been like very like what I would identify. It's like an aspect that it's like, well, this seems normal for people, like Reiki and meditation, like, you know, people like that. And I enjoy it too. And yet there's been this part of me for so long that, again, it's like, and it's my mixed energy is like a half black, half white woman, if I could say that, right? It's like this internal place in which I sit as an individual that I feel now I need to show up more in like the truth of who I am. And so there's going to probably be some changes of that. And I feel like even just with this video, it's like, it's exciting to me to talk about this. And I'm not sure what it's going to look like. There might be some movements of who wants to follow and not like engage with this content, right? Content. And I'm okay with that if it means that I'm going to become more of who I am and express myself more of who I am, no matter what the judgments, criticisms, acceptance, or validation might look like from others. Because like I said, it's not about me and everyone else. It's about me on my path, just like it's about you on your path. We are all this hermit energy as we enter into the higher realms, right? I love how this card is like the halfway point before we get into the double digits of the Tarot Major Arcana. Whew. So, I'm going to just check here real quick. I just want to see if there's anything that wants to stand out for the number 15 for us, which is the key card number for the Devil card. And then we will continue on. So the 15th path connects Chokhmah and Tiferet, which is wisdom up here, with that sun. You could say this is the father, actually. So that's interesting. The Devil card, the 15th path, actually is what helped Jesus transcend to the Father. It's the magic sum of the magic square of Saturn, I believe that is. I always get Saturn and Jupiter, but I'm pretty sure that's Saturn. It's the mystic number of the 5th path, Gebura, which is severity. But it's also tied to, or it spells out the word Hod, which is the splendor, the 8th sphere on the tree, which was actually the sphere that it all combined to today as well. Yeah, and it's the Olympic planetary spirit of the sun, Och, which I'm not really familiar with the Olympic planetary spirit, so I'm not going to go into that. But there we go. The devil. This is why we do this stuff. The devil is the tie between Christ. Oh my God, this is so blasphemous. Christ and Chokhmah, the Father, wisdom. I can't do this without looking. Chokhmah to Tiferet. This path, this red path, is the path of the devil, the path of Ayin, the eye, which in the Thoth deck, if you can see it here, if I put this down, it'll show it. He has a third eye, which I think Crowley wrote, or the Madame Harris or whatever her name is that drew the cards, that he has the eye of God. And behind him here is the tree of life. This is the tree of life. It looks like a peanut. This is a phallic symbol, you guys. Literally, life being birthed up into time, into this, matter and space-time, I guess we could say. Saturn being that energy. So there's something here. Whatever it is for you, I will leave it at that. I appreciate you taking the time to listen and watch. And may this full moon, I would encourage you to go out, to spend some time doing a ritual, however that looks for you, and tuning into the energy of drawing both that light and dark so that you can be your whole, most authentic self. Okay? And yeah, I'll see you in another video. Bye.